Yeah, I got it.
So Leroy, I sent that new outline, right? You got it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, go ahead, guys. We're ready.
We're thrilled to be welcoming Homefulness today to the Teach Giving conversation. I feel like they don't really need much of an introduction, but we have a video to share an action that they all participated in. That was yesterday, wasn't it? Yes, yesterday in the Tenderloin, calling on Hastings to give up at least one building of the 2 blocks that they've recently purchased. So we're going to dive right in with that video.
Gentrification tours are us. Coming to a displaced gentrified AKKdemia near you.
Welcome to the Stolen Land Hoarded Resources Tour through Occupy Yama, San Francisco, Tenderloin, and the Academia Wealth Hoarders known as University of California, Hastings. We are here to take back stolen land so houseless people can build their own houses. We are also here to demand that there are no evictions of already homeless people from motels in the pandemic and in the middle of winter.
We are indigenous families, a poor magazine, formerly houseless folks from landless people liberation movement called Homefulness, where we already built 6 townhouses. And so again, we're speaking about solutions as poor people. We no longer want to be swept away. We don't want what UC Hastings keep doing, complaining, suing the city, instead of helping us, the houseless folks.
So many people may not know, when we say stolen land, this is all stolen. This is occupied Yamamu of the Lashana Ohlone peoples. So when we say stolen land, we're talking about the theft of institutions like this, University of California, Hastings, that is built on payouts and backroom deals and tax breaks and overpriced tuition. But it's also built on eugenicists, white supremacists, and all the ways that wealth hoarders continue to make it and have more and more while the rest of us have less and less. So we are here on this stolen land tour to say, you see Hastings? You see Hastings? Give it back! You might wonder, well, why would you want to take a university back? Well, let's talk about what the university has.
Come on now.
So right over there, people, I want you to be directed. You see Hastings, but, air quotes, but, because nobody owns MamaEarth, but 2 blocks of the Tenderloin. And then they hired private police to sweep the streets. Sweep. That's called sweep human beings, because we are trash when we're outside. We are no longer considered humans. We are equated with trash. Let's not get it twisted. Hygienic metaphors mean human beings are trash. So we say to you, Steve Hastings, give us 1 building of your 2 blocks that you just bought so we can build our own self-determined solutions to our own problems. So we are going to start like we always do, with prayer.
I'm going to start with the name of this ancestor who is my son, who died nobly, giving his life for another life. Torian de Jour Hughes, Ashe, for being your brother's keeper. And as I pour, shout out the names.
Papa Bear,
Ibaye,
Luis Dimitro Gongara,
Luis, Ibaye.
We come in peace. This is not a protest, but I'd like to say it's a demand. Okay, an emergency, and this is an emergency proposal. We, the unhoused, displaced, privatized, enslaved, bordered, criminalized, working or underemployed or unemployed, poor, disabled, and colonized, traumatized, and profited off of people's present. You with the proposal to redistribute, reparate, and or begin a dialogue of healing from the disease of wealth and resource hoarding, generations of or inherited land stealing, displacing academic or cultural theft, and or desecrating.
And through an endless series of white
pro-business, pro-corporate, anti-corporate.
That was incredibly powerful. Thank you.
What is that where you wanted me to stop, or was?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you. So without further ado, we have a limited amount of time. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the folks from Poor Magazine. Thank you for joining us today, Tiny, and everyone, Leroy, everybody. Thank you.
We didn't cross the border crossed us. Muteado silencio, presente y me alegro. Mis palabras son mis balas, mi lápiz es mi arma. Muteado silencio, my words are my bullets, my pen is my gun. We didn't cross the borders crossed us.
No nonprofit organizer can speak for the Pope. No college professors can speak for the Pope. I can speak for the Pope because I'm on the Pope. Count my head, I'm on the broke on this block. You see me, cause I own less than you. You diss me, these slums, mine, frustration, mine, this thirst, mine, starvation, mine, these wants, mine, these tears, mine. Displacement fears, mine. They're with me all the time. No president is mine, and neither is his government. They sure represent the class hate I resent. I don't count the institutions of power. I don't count to a racist coward. Picture me not once worshiping their flag, as long as continue to deny its slag. No news reporter can speak for the Pope. No social worker can speak for the Pope. I can speak for the Pope because I'm on the Pope. Count my head, I'm on the broke on this block. You see me, D. Allen, Deep East Oakland, California.
Leroy.
I am the black crippled, hanging out with my black disabled ancestors from Jim Crow to Harriet Tubman. We've been here. We'll be here.
I'm that poverty scholar, that houseless mama, that houseless daughter. Yeah, I'm a poverty scholar. All those people you don't want to see, never want to be, look away from me. What you gonna do, arrest me? We're in your city. Yeah, I'm a poverty scholar. I rock my jailhouse attire, not because orange is the new black. Don't believe that Hollywood crack. No, it's because me and my po mama did jail time. Jail time for the poverty crime of being unhoused in this occupied indigenous holler. I'm a poverty scholar, walking in love and liberation with my Afro-Boricua mama, for without whom there would be no me, a mama soltera and a welfare queen. So, Moteado, just tell us a little bit about what Poor Magazine is.
Yes, and thank you everyone who made the time to be here with us. So again, Poor Magazine is a poor people-led, indigenous people-led, grassroots organization. We do media, we do art, and again, we know, there are stories intentionally sometimes are silent, and again, we're giving the mics, the cameras to our folks, to the day laborers, to the poverty folks, to all the folks from Roofless Radio.
Leroy, what's homefulness?
Yeah, so homefulness is the answer to homelessness. Homefulness is a way of living, a way of being. Homefulness came into existence after 20-something years of Poor Magazine through their teaching of health, of wealth hoarding, and how to redistribute that money to the people that's already been doing work. So homefulness didn't come from a grant or a charity. It came from poor people's thinking and poor people's work, and it's been growing ever since.
So as you might hear, we're poets and cultural workers, and we say that homefulness was built with a story. I want to repeat that because that's a powerful statement, and I'm calling in Uncle Al Robles, Piri Tomas, and all of our ancestor warriors for liberation. Homefulness was built with a story. And again, to start us today out in a good way, we do need to start with a prayer. So on these digital streets, if people can close their eyes and pray with us for just a second. Thank you, Creator, for another day of life. Thank you, Lashawn Ohlone ancestors of this land, at least where this Zoom street is coming from, in occupied Deep East Uchin, and all of the other ancestors of these stolen pieces of Turtle Island and Mama Earth who might be tuning in today. As we get to this time, which is called Thanksgiving, and we know that has colonized and traumatized and killed people, genocided people, this is nothing less than thanks taking or no thanks. I want to call in all of those indigenous ancestors who we walk with every day as we unsell Mama Earth in America KKK. I want to thank the Black and brown and poor people who always walk with us and who are dying on these streets from the lie, from the colonial crafted lie called poverty. And I want to bring in specifically the ancestors of everybody on this Zoom, on this digital street today, to open your hearts to heal the ancestral trauma that you might be walking still in with your descendants, and to all the people listening and tuning in, to open your hearts to a different way to live and to be in a very difficult time for everyone, but also in this time of change. Thank you to Mama Earth, for without whom there'd be no us. Ashe, Aho, Umadeo. So again, we say anthropology, ethnography, psychology, the study about us, without us, our spirits, our cultures, our traditions through your lens, deconstructing our struggles while our communities are dismantled and left in rubble, acquired with academic privilege, linguistic domination gifts, sorted and separated and parsed out in American school systems, and the cult of independence and the myth of inclusion. How are you going to take photographic essays in Oakland, India, or Bangladesh, but not so much as slice off a small piece of your privilege or access? So we got a new plan, a new kind of brothership, sistership, mothership. It's called Poverty Scholarship, and it includes all our gifts. So we're going to just start with a couple words from this powerful textbook. I like to call it a textbook, even though it's actually a poor people's theory book. Guess what? Us poor people have a theory. It's original theory, because with us, our theory is our life. But we're just going to have a little bit of the introduction read, because all of the concepts that we live are the concepts that come from this theory and the theory called our struggle, our life, and our resistance. Leroy?
So poverty scholars are the people usually silenced, incarcerated, criminalized to place, homeless, disabled, marginalized, shorted, separated, and extinguished.
The notion of poverty scholarship was born in the calles, the prisons, the street corners, community centers, welfare offices, shelters, assembly lines, favelas, projects, and so-called ghettos. All the people, all the places. People don't look for educators and experts, leaders and researchers, lecturers and linguists and media producers.
Poverty scholars are told our knowledge is not valid or legitimate, our speech is improper, our work and our choices criminal, our words inept.
But our schools are everywhere. Our teachings are essential, haphazard, and immediate, fluid and static. We are your mama, your cousin, your elders, your corner store owner, your recycler.
Our research is based on our lives and our experience. Our solutions are vast knowledge of what works and what can work. Our visions are based on the dreams of our ancestors, our elders, and our youth.
So again, that's just a little bit out of the Poverty Scholarship book. I had a JPEG included with that I wanted to have you guys bring up, but it's all good if you don't. I'm like struggling on these digital streets today. But I just want to go back for a minute and kind of live into and talk through the notions that we're presenting today, you know, are really big ideas. And they're also, as I often say, nothing different than what any of my brother and sister poverty scholars could teach you. But you may not be listening. So as you all, if you noticed, we started with the Stolen Land Hoarded Resources tour. That was the one we did at UC Hastings, but it was also at the mayor's office. Part 2 went to the San Francisco mayor's office, who's currently has plans to evict something like 2,700 already houseless people from the motels that city begrudgingly granted to houseless folks in a pandemic who were demanded to shelter in place. But guess what? They had no place. How do you shelter in place if you don't got a place? And as we know, even the CDC, and some of you guys may know, said that sweeps shouldn't happen because our tents are our place. And guess what? The sweeps are continuing from Sacramento to San Francisco to San Diego, from Minnesota to Maine. Sweeps, AKA, as you heard in the video, hygienic metaphors about human beings' lives and bodies, like we are trash, continue in a pandemic. One of the important pieces and the reason that we're bringing these very important facts up to everybody on this Zoom call is you cannot talk about solutions until you overstand and understand, as my mama Dee would say, the struggle of missing a meal. We don't have to go to the global south to find real poverty, as oftentimes people are wrongfully taught in these institutional schools. It's right down the street, or maybe it's right outside your front door. But as houseless folks in this occupied land, we don't have the privilege of privacy. We have the violence of exposure, which basically means that our bodies and our lives, our struggles are seen. So if we're, constantly people are called dirty and messy who are outside. Well, imagine if someone came in and took the roof off of the apartment that you're sitting in right now, or your closet, or your storage space. Would they call you messy? This kind of violence happens every day, sometimes more than once, in many of the cities that we've been talking about. And yet, houseless folks are seen as a tribe, like somehow just because we don't have a roof, we're different than everybody else. actually what we are is a multiverse. Like all humans, we have different kinds of problems. We have different kinds of struggles. We'd have different kinds of answers, and we also have different solutions. And so when we say Homefulness was built with the story, it's because the story is our life. And you have been today meeting a few of the co-builders of that story. It began in 1996 when me and my mom were sleeping on bus benches and shelter beds and in the backseat of our car, getting police harassed for the act of being houseless in the backseat of a car. Because as I'm sure everybody on this Zoom call knows, it's a citable offense to live without a roof in this occupied land. Very important part, though, is to understand that the criminalization all stems from the concept of owning Mama Earth. And so one of our main focuses today was really about looking at the notion that we talk about all the time, teach about desperately, and try to implement actively, no, not try, do, which is the idea of unselling Mama Earth. If you unsold Mama Earth tomorrow, you would end homelessness tomorrow. So what do we mean by that? Well, you just met a few of the residents, myself, Dee, Alan, Mutiago, Israel is coming in soon. So far, 6 houseless people are housed right here on Homefulness. So again, we don't teach anything. We don't live, walk, dream, and activate. So what does that mean? Well, one of the things is we're spiritually and legally unselling Mama Earth here. And one of the important pieces about that is we don't practice the lie of rent. And I want to just have people sit with that for a second, because I say a lot of things and they might get lost. So rent is a lie. It's a capitalist lie, rooted in the idea that not only should Mama Earth be considered a commodity to be bought and sold on the commodities market, to be speculated and real estate, but that also once you commodify something in a capitalist system, you automatically then have to show that it can be a profit-making venture. Okay, so these are the words. These are the capitalist words. And yes, by the way, I do like to remix the colonial languages, but I do ask, as poor people, we say intellectual property is the only property we have. So if you do use any of my words, please cite Tiny or Poor Magazine. But I say that to say that the concept of colonization is talked about a lot. Even, now it's real sexy and movement and to talk about colonization and these things, but rarely is the actual aspect of buying and selling Mama Earth, except by our indigenous elders who we follow closely, or part of our Elephant Council Board, all of our indigenous elders and descendants right now. Asheda, Sister Karina Gold from the Loni Lishan Nation, who's one of our family elders and one of our co-builders here of Segorte Land Trust, and many others. But except for First Peoples of this land, who this land was stolen from, rarely, if ever, is the concept of unselling, of ending commodification, and the relationship of rent as violence really spoken about and actually lived. And so how do we do that, right? Well, first of all, it's through a whole decolonizing and degentrifying process. So I want to give an invitation to anybody on the Zoom call to consider going to People School. We do a People School session twice a year. And the next one is January 30th and 31st. You can go to www.racepovertymediajustice.org. Someone wants to put that in the chat, and you can register for that. And this is just a icing off the cake today, because it's almost a lifelong process, right? We've all been lied to in capitalism about the idea that Mama Earth is a commodity, that that it's almost a given, right? Not only in the Americlan dream that, you know, we need to get a piece of property, we need to buy property, we need to do these, but all these other pieces of that puzzle. Things like the away nation that we speak about, the separation nation, the way that institutions like UC Hastings and UC Berkeley and Stanford and Harvard and so many more literally feed off of the capitalist dream. And without the products of humanity and humans, couldn't continue their commodifying of the knowledge market as well. And so there's a lot of teaching in there. And a lot of it has to be unpacked, because when you're unpacking 528 years of lies, sometimes and most of the time, it can take your whole life. But for those of us who, you know, were unable to continue within the capitalist dream, like my mama, and I want to call in Mama D, for without whom there'd be no me, a mixed race orphan, Afro-Boricua and Irish, and basically whose mama tried to kill her, and many other ways that poor people and broken people, our lives, and specifically the lives of unprotected children and humans, are predated upon. How she even continued is beyond me, and this is the strength of our mamas, but by any means necessary, she kept on keeping on. And when I was 11 years old, we ended up outside. I always center the story in this place because my story isn't unusual. It's just one of many stories that we have as broken people inside of this colonial system. And at that time, we ended up, I had to drop out of formal institutions of learning and enroll full-time in the School of Hard Knocks. And I'm proud to say I graduated with a PhD in poverty. But again, I'm not glamorizing. Those positions almost killed us, as they do most of my brothers and sisters who end up in these positions. And it's for my entire childhood into young adulthood, I ended up me and Ma on the street. And in that time that almost killed us, we knew, and my mom clearly knew, what we needed to do, but nobody listened. And so, you know, one of the very important things is, and that's part of that, is as a resistance to capitalism, one of the forms of violence is the isolation nation, because it enables the continuation of the buying and selling of Mama Earth and the continuation of the lie of rent. And again, these are big ideas, and I'm only just touching the surface. But one of the pieces around that was that we couldn't afford the rent. How about that? My mom was stable. She was able to work any further. She had worked her whole life. We were micro business people, vendedores on the street, working as hard as we could to survive, and we could never pay the rent. So we were evicted over and over and over again. And it's really important, and I bring this up because it's really important. You know, a lot of people, again, do this weird sort of all the homeless people, like somehow, again, because we don't have a roof, we're now no longer, you know, individuals or families. Now we're just a monolith called a problem that politricksters throw around when they want to get elected, and haters and police throw around with these terms of cleaning, et cetera. But one of the important parts is that many of us who are on the street, if not all, used to have roofs. How about that? And then we were individuals with different stories. And part of the important part of that is that the concept of rent itself is one of the acts of violence that causes massive amounts of elders and children and families and mothers and fathers to be outside. And yet again, never linked up, right? Thanks to philanthropimping and all of the other ways that issues and problems are all separated intentionally into different, grant guidelines and projects and campaigns and strategies. At the end of the day, issues of tenants and issues of houseless people are rarely, if ever, connected. Issues of disabled elders and people who are struggling to stay alive are rarely connected, right? Issues of indigenous land theft and homeless people are rarely connected. But one of the very important pieces for us is that we come under this concept of poverty and colonization and homelessness is that all of those things intersect, right? And not only do they intersect, but they all bring you back to the relationship to our fragility as humans. And then in that fragility, the capitalist dream, the lie of rent, the violence of sweeps, the violence of the ways that these systems are set up to police, harass, and predate on us are all of the things that we walk with. And bringing us back is why we root a lot of our work in the liberation of Mama Earth itself. So I'd like to bring up the that stolen land tour, just about a minute of that one that's there on the outline, if Janelle or Christine could do it. And note the beatific scene.
How long do you want me to play it?
Just like, I think I'll tell you, but I think right after the narrator speaks, maybe 30 seconds to a minute the most.
Okay, I'll wait for you to.
Okay.
Welcome to the Stolen Land Hoarded Resource Decolonization Redistribution Community Reparations Tour, where poor folks, Black, brown, disabled, and Native American folks, along with folks with race and class privilege, we go together and tour these neighborhoods, blighted by wealth hoarding and land stealing, and share the medicine of redistribution and community reparations.
We're not asking to folks to give up all of the wealth, but just to share, the extra condo, or if you got 4 of them, and you're not even using one.
We're all dealing with poverty-stricken problems, but at the end of the day, there are some extended families that have money and resources, and so we're just trying to tap into them.
Hi, we're just sharing the medicine of redistribution with folks.
We are coming around talking to the neighbors in the community about redistributing wealth and sharing resources.
Idea if you might have extra to share with folks who are homeless. There's a crisis also with First Nations folks.
There's enough for all of us. There's enough for all of us.
I'm from Marin. I wanted to get.
So I wanted to bring this up because we were in one of the most, there's so many, right? It's like, God, but some of the biggest billionaires, how can there even be such a thing? And then now trillionaires, people making money off this pandemic is absolutely insane. And I know that everybody on here is conscious, but they're not, you don't have to look that far, right? we go into these neighborhoods that were not invited intentionally, that the cops are immediately called. It usually takes maybe 5 to 20 seconds, and then we have a police escort. And we say it's not a protest, it's a proposal, with the idea that, if you have a vacation home in the Bahamas or 2 condos, maybe you only need 1 to house you and your families. If you have a trust fund, maybe you only need half of that, or maybe you need none of that, because at the end of the day, again, we are lied to about this idea of what is enough, and all of these ways in which wealth hoarding is promoted and perpetrated within a capitalist system. And I bring that up because you can't unsell MamaEarth without first buying her so that you can unsell her. And it's a really important piece. This isn't some hippie utopic idea, right? This is actually real. And because all of MamaEarth is bought and sold and pimped and played, crucial aspects of this liberation movement is the folks with race and class privilege who form Poor Magazine Solidarity Family and have now created the Bank of Community Reparations, which is up to supporting over 800 families now with the Poor Mama's Diaper Fund, utility payments, rent, all of these ways that we're actually enacting something we call community reparations, which is rooted in interdependence. And then if I could go to the next article that's linked there.
Sorry, give me a minute. I also linked it in the chat. You just want me to pull the article up, right?
Okay, no problem.
Is that what you want?
Yeah, just to pull that up. Oh, shoot. Why is this not on? Hey guys, so I know that there's a lot of folks involved in this beautiful, Janelle's project and the radical real estate work. And I really, really want to send extra love to everybody who's doing this work. For us, it's actually a glimmer of hope in so much bullshit. So I just want to give it up to y'all on that. Right? And to be walking in liberation and also be using the word lawyer at the same time in the same sentence is in and of itself an act of revolution. So I say that to say that for us, land trusts, and don't go all the way down yet because I wanted to, we don't have any power. That's what I was trying to say. I'm about to go down, that's why. So what you're looking at is the opening ceremony, an image from the opening ceremony of the Bank of Community Reparations, where some of the conscious wealth hoarders that came through People School actually began this process of trying to realize that they had been sold the lie of capitalism and hoarding as well. And so I bring that up to say again that land trusts, albeit beautiful, and right now the only resistance that people have for us are not enough. Because at the end of the day, land trusts are rooted in the same settler colonial laws that LLCs and blah, 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 and boo, boo, woo, and grant deeds and mortgages. And basically what we see is a bloody paper trail to our death, right? And so for us, what we're looking at is what we call liberation of land trust, which is actually to take, again, spiritually and legally, to take MamaEarth off the commodities market and to enact and build a different concept of use and love and stewardship that has nothing to do with profit. And so again, what does that look like in real time? We have six family here who are actually already living here, and we're about to have 8 more families moving in, and none of whom pay rent. We pay a contribution. We came up with a contribution because we all live in a capitalist system, so we got to deal with insurance and taxes and utilities and all these, and we're trying to move slowly off the bloodstained dollar economy. But we also know that the bloodstained dollar economy has to get a little piece of use. You can't move completely off. Ibaye to move Africa, long live John Africa, one of our leaders as well as the Shack Dwellers Union in South Africa, Zapatistas in Chiapas, and the MST, Movimiento Sin Tierra in Brazil, who are other landless people's movements looking at land and each other in a different way and in a different connection, and actually living into a different way to be. So we say all that to say, if we're going to be talking about true liberation, again, then we have to talk about how do you liberate yourself from the bloody paper trails that are actually all tied to resources, right? So again, going back to what that is, we have this contribution that we came up with, but that if people can't pay, they don't have any money, and it depends on who we are, we're all different people, then what they do is different forms of support work, or what we call poor people sweat equity, to support the movement that we're building. We have a radio station modeled after Zapatista Radio right here, 96.1 KEXU. You can hear Free Aslan and the Poor People's Radio News Hour, Tuesday and Thursday programming, 96.1 FM. And then we have a school, Decolonize Academy. You saw some of our youth in the video, a liberation school modeled after the Zapatista schools and the Black Panther Party schools. We also have the Sliding Scale Cafe, which actually shares food and diapers and resources to over 700 families a week in the pandemic, which it used to be just the community, and now it's a lot of people, because a lot of people are hurting. We practice radical redistribution with the little bit that we have, always. That's how we move. That's as fellow poor people movements. But again, if people can't do that contribution because the contribution is not rooted in profit, then they don't, right? But how can we do that? We can only do that because of our radical redistributors. So these movements in a capitalist system that are talking about the UnSelling of MamaEarth are also very clear on the ways in which bloodstained dollars has to apply as it becomes transformed into love-stained dollars. So this land trust, or the liberation of land trust, and you can go scroll down a little bit more, stemmed out of the Bank of Community Reparations. And one of the pieces that we're, trying to figure out is, because we live in a capitalist system and because we have to engage with the state, which, by the way, we have all the way through in terms of our building. We're sitting in one of the houses right now that's one of the 4 townhouses, in the future 8 more units here. And we decided from the beginning that we were going to do it within the settler colonial lies, so they could never steal it from us. And when I mean steal, is that we are down with squats and we support every squat. But we know, just like to our sisters from Moms for Housing, that when they decide that they're done with you, they're going to come in with tanks and water cannons, and they're going to pull you out. And so we decided to do this a different way, which means that we intentionally engaged with the state to do it by the book. And so we're dealing with these struggles right now of what this document of the liberation of land trust would even be, because we do know, and I've already dealt with the fact of the spiritual aspect of it, the community aspect of it. It's the people's agreement. It's taken, 528 years, 22 years, the last 3 months with the new folks. It's a non-static fluid document to create. But what we're not sure is what that would look like as it hits, the settler colonial bodies. And so one of the things that we have done in the meantime, because we've been abused by what I affectionately call the permit gangsters, is we created a legislation. And I don't know if you, Christine or Janelle, happen to have it to pull up, or a little piece of it. But it's a legislation to make it possible for poor and homeless builders like us to not be abused by what we call the permit gangsters, who to date, we've paid, literally had to raise with our reparators almost $100,000 in permit fees to make this humble, 11 units. And so thanks to Bobby Lopez, who works in Rebecca Kaplan's office, thanks to Rebecca Ruiz and other folks, and all of us at Homefulness Magazine who created the idea, this ordinance is actually coming up for voting, and we would love your support. It's going to probably be led by a combination of Rebecca Kaplan and Carol Fife's office in Oakland. And if it passes, we'll have a precedent-setting impact on the whole country, actually, because permitting and the ways in which building is set up is absolutely connected with the same commodities market that buys and sells MamaEarth. So there's no accident that costs what it does, because it's all rooted in these huge housing developers, as I call them, who make money off of MamaEarth. So that's where we're at right now. That's kind of a overarching small piece of a very huge story. I don't know if folks have any questions. I know we're running out of time. We probably only have about 8 minutes or so. But yeah.
I think we actually have 38 minutes. Is that right? No? Oh.
No. Today's shorter. It's 1 hour.
Yeah, it only goes till 1, as I recall, till 12. But that's fine. And we could keep talking if nobody has questions. I just wanted to make sure that open it up if there was any burning questions. We've said a whole lot, small amount of time. So
I do have to say, I love that you're going after the law school. And totally support that.
One more time. We didn't hear you, hon. I'm sorry. One more time.
Sorry, my microphone is bad. I just want to say I love that you're going after the law school. Hastings.
Oh, yes. I mean, and that's a crazy story for those of you who don't know the backstory. But I'm sure most people heard the debacle of evicting already houseless people that's going on in Frisco. And now just the Board of Supervisors finally stepped in, said that they were going to make sure, and Newsom throw down some more money. And so it looks like we got a postponement. But actually we're working on possibly, we don't know. So far it's been a promise, a meeting with the mayor to talk about giving one of the hotels to houseless people so they can build their own Homefulness Project. What I want to let people understand and overstand is that Homefulness is a template, and we don't F with politricksters, by the way. So we're kind of not looking forward to that meeting, but We do know that the reality is that all of these cities all across Turtle Island, have surplus land, have surplus, buildings that they hoard as well, and that those could be turned into to homefulness projects. I also want to let people on this call know, because it's not really spoken about enough. And Leroy, if you wanted to throw down at all, the whole RAD project, which is a benign acronym coming up by HUD, right? D's holding his arm, is an evil process that basically killed and dismantled all poor people housing as we know it. So the whole idea of projects and public housing that people used to think that us poor folks had access to is no longer there. It has been dismantled. Poor Magazine was one of the few people, along with the Bayview, who we work with, badass newspaper, who pulled that story out in 2013 when it first was getting in quiet as kept under a Democon, so-called administration. And essentially, with one fell swoop from Julian Castro's pen, there's no more public housing as we know it. So not only is the situation really deadly and violent for us once we're houseless, but it's also that the housing we used to have for the poorest of our communities across this occupied land is absolutely decimated. And it's very important to make these dot connections. Leroy, did you want to add any on that?
RAD is totally bad. And in the matter of fact, it's one of the policies that Trump loved. He kept it. So it's going on 3 administrations, and because of RAD, you can't move anywhere. I just had an emergency in like about 15 minutes that I have bed bugs. I didn't know, and so dealing with that, can't move anywhere. So, people have to deal with what they have to deal with in these public housing instead of being up to code in the first place. So we're dealing with housing that has all kinds of problems. And because of Obama and Clinton and now Donald Trump, you can't move anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that exactly. And I part of the problem too, again, is that, we get splinters of information, so a lot of activists and so-called housing advocates don't even know or speak about RAD. But I do need to say it because, you'll hear it from me and probably me and my fellow comrades at POOR. You won't hear it from most people. But non-profiteering is real. And part of the way that RAD even happened was that the nonprofits, not all of them, as we know, there's a lot of badass nonprofits, but a lot of them had their hands in the cookie jar, air quotes, and literally co-wrote that legislation, as I call it, because then they could get money from the services that they would provide to the poor people. I mean, it's just crazy. I want to shout out to my brothers and sisters at RAP, Western Regional Advocacy Project. I also want to shout out that poormagazine.org is a source of resources and what we call research, poor people-led research, and our radio show that Leroy has, and Moteado and myself and Gerald and Free Aslan with JV and others, because what we try to do is make sure that our voices are heard, because oftentimes they're intentionally silenced, as we talked about in the beginning.
Tiny, can I say one more thing?
Please, go ahead. And we only have about 2 more minutes, so go ahead.
Yeah. about this housing 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago. A group of us took the landlord to court because the elevator was down for a month. And it took us 2 years to get, to go through the courts and then get that win. But can you imagine 2 months with no elevator?
Right.
And we still had to go to court, and it still took 2 years.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Leroy has CP, if I can say it, just in case people don't know. So we're talking about an absolute act of ableist violence, right? I want to shout out to Irish Canada, 100-year-old Black elder evicted behind the lie of rent. I want to shout out Papa Bear, who died on the San Francisco streets after getting 286 citations for the act of being houseless and Black in that gentrification city. We walk with these ancestors all the time. I do want to thank all of you. I know we're running out. And again, to close in prayer, just to recognize that, we would not ever be doing the work that we were doing without, first of all solidarity folks like yourselves and Janelle and others. To all poverty scholars in the room, we thank you, and to keep on keeping on. And stay in touch. And if you want to get more of this information, come to People School. Ashe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Always so powerful. And those of us who have been to law school and had our minds thoroughly colonized by all of that, your words really do help, I think, jolt us out of the ways that we think about things and talk about things. And it's sort of like a mental detox listening to you. So thank you.
Thank you to everybody for joining us on our last and final day of Thanks Teaching. It's been a pleasure to share this information and bring all these amazing warriors to the forefront and to elevate their voices. Thank you all for sharing your time with us.
Thank you for organizing, Christine. Thank you for organizing.
We'll see everybody soon.